Hi, I'm Alma Katsu, author. Now, you may know me for historical horror novels like The Hunger and The Deep, but I'm here today answering some questions. I'm doing an AMA on what was it like to have a life in intelligence. And this is in support of my book, Red Widow, my first spy novel, which is coming out on March 23rd. Now, I didn't just wake up one day and decide I wanted to write a spy novel. I wrote it actually because I had a whole career in intelligence. Over 30 years, I worked for federal intelligence agencies like CIA and NSA and some other places, spent 30 years plus in Washington, D.C., and I've decided to try my hand at telling some great stories around what's really a fascinating line of work and something that's very important to all Americans, right? How intelligence supports policy. Believe me, I could tell really long, boring stories about how all that works, but I'll try to keep with the interesting ones. So what I did was I asked my readers to give me questions that they would like me to answer about what was it like to work in intelligence. Because one thing I have found out over the years is when people find out that you did work, this kind of work, they always have a million questions. So I'm here to answer the unclassified ones because while I like you a lot, I'm not willing to go to jail for you by talking about classified stuff. So we'll just answer the unclassified ones. And here's a question, and I love this question because it sort of points to the quotidian, right? They wanted to know, what were the facilities like? Are they utilitarian, or did you at least have a nice cafeteria and break room, as well as activities for the staff in the off time? So I love this because it shows to me sort of like what the public perception is like of these agencies. The reality is, if you worked at the headquarters of these agencies, they're generally pretty nice places, although it does vary from agency to agency. And like I said, I've been doing this for 30 years, long enough so that I've seen new buildings, new headquarters built, and the old ones sort of retired, or just kind of given a secondary role. So some of the new ones these days are absolutely gorgeous. So first of all, I'll talk about CIA's headquarters. It's the same headquarters from the very beginning. They've just built on. So there's actually two wings. There's what we call the old headquarters building and some wings that are sort of around it. And the new headquarters building, which isn't that new anymore. But they're both lovely buildings. They each sort of have their own character. In the center is a very big cafeteria, which was completely refurbished shortly after I retired. Or I left, I should say. I actually retired from NSA. But it's a lovely building. There are facilities. When I first started there, they were just adding the gyms, which are very popular. In our line of work, it pays to keep fit. So the gyms are so popular, they're hard to get into sometimes. But other than that, there's not a lot of other facilities. And that's because it's not the kind of place where you have to stay there 24 hours a day. If you do stay there 24 hours a day, there's access to food and that sort of thing. But generally, people come in, do their shift, and they go home at the end of the day. Forward operating bases or that sort of thing where you're out close to enemy territory and you're supporting wartime operations or something like that, they'll have more 24-hour-a-day types of facilities for support. Now, I also worked at NSA. As a matter of fact, that's where I started my career. In 1982, you can do the math, I spent over 20 years there, and then I went to CIA for a very long time, but I wrapped up my career at NSA. And I remember the thing about NSA when I first started, I was shocked at just how utilitarian that headquarters was. The main building was actually made out of cinder blocks. And I remember thinking it reminded me a lot of the Army hospitals that I was taken to as a child because I was a service brat. Very, very utilitarian. And it actually, and then also they built on two new buildings, and I think there's been some other annexes sort of put on since then. But it still is, comparatively, a pretty utilitarian, not super fancy building compared to some of the other ones. Now, if you go online and you look at agencies of the intelligence community, or the IC as we like to call it. There are now 18 now that Space Force has joined it. Take a look around. There's a couple agencies such as NRA, National Reconnaissance Agency, that have built some pretty swanky, fancy facilities, and some of them have great amenities that we don't have at some of the other ones. So at State Department, for instance, where I did spend a year of my life in policy, not in intelligence, they have a dry cleaner, which was really a lifesaver sometimes. And I think they had a hair salon. NSA had a barber shop for the longest time. I don't know if they still do. Most of these places have credit unions, their own credit union, or some kind of banking facility. Some will have daycare, fairly not on the premises, but close. That's tied to the agency, which is a huge lifesaver for parents. Well, I hope this has been of interest to you. Oh, I should add that the food is usually not great. Some of the places, food's a little better. They've certainly gone through iterations over the years. I was at the Pentagon, by the way, after 9/11, spent a year there. The year afterwards, again, doing policy, not doing intelligence work. But it was funny because when I started at the Pentagon, it was everything you would think the Pentagon food would be, these huge like mess halls, steam tables. But at that time they underwent a big renovation and they did away with all of those and they brought in fast food restaurants, believe it or not. But I think it answered the need. That's what a lot of the soldiers wanted. And it was fast. You could get in and out much quicker. I can't say the food was any healthier. And the funny thing is they did away with donuts. It was almost impossible to get donuts. One day you could go in and you would, in the morning, you would just see legions of donuts laid out. And the next day was almost impossible. And I heard the story was some high muckety-muck general looked around, saw what terrible shape a lot of the officers were that were working at the Pentagon, saw the donuts and said, this is it, we're getting rid of them. I don't know if that's an urban legend or not, but to this day it's hard to get a donut at the Pentagon. Well, thanks for listening. If you liked it, I hope you will like or subscribe. Share the link, tell your friends to come over and check out the videos. If you have questions that you want me to answer, feel free to drop them in the comments section. I'm going to try to do 2 or 3 of these a week. We've got a few weeks before the book comes out. And also, if you want to be notified or get any more information, please go to my website, which is almakatsu.com, and you'll see a pop-up come up where you can sign up for the newsletter. It's a monthly newsletter. I revamped it. I've been getting great feedback from it. We have a monthly contest where we give away books. So if you're finding any of this fun, I really hope you're going to join the family and sign up for the newsletter. Well, thank you so much, and I hope you come back for the next video.